Every civilization has a weapon. The Turians have discipline. The Asari have diplomacy. Humanity has determination. The Salarians have their minds. Because in the mind of the Salarians, the best war is the one your enemy never realizes they already lost. Before the Salarians became some of the galaxy's greatest scientists, or founded the Citadel Council, or uplifted the Krogan, and before they created one of the most controversial biological weapons in galactic history, there was Sur'Kesh, a humid world of dense jungles, winding rivers, and sprawling marshlands. It was here that the Salarians first evolved. To most species, they appear almost fragile, tall, thin, lightweight, far from the imposing figures of the Krogan or the disciplined soldiers of the Turian hierarchy. At first glance, it is easy to underestimate them, but that would be your mistake, because the Salarians were never built to overpower their enemies. They were built to outthink them. Everything about a Salarian is designed for speed, not physical strength, but efficiency. Their metabolism is among the fastest of any intelligent species in the galaxy. Their hearts beat faster, their thoughts race faster, their reflexes are quicker. This accelerated biology comes with extraordinary advantages. Most Salarians only need a single hour of sleep each day to be fully functional. Compare that to humans who need between 6 to 8 hours. Their minds process information at remarkable speeds, allowing them to recognize patterns, solve complex problems, and adapt to changing situations almost instinctively. They also possess photographic memories, capable of recalling conversations, faces, and details with amazing accuracy, even after years of experiencing them. They rarely forget facts. And knowledge? It isn't simply just remembered. It's cataloged, organized, ready to be recalled the instant it is needed. Even their senses reflect their evolutionary advantage. Their large eyes allow them to perceive ultraviolet light, helping them detect details that many other species could never notice. Small things, subtle things, the kind of detail that most people will overlook, yet can change everything. But evolution always demands a price. For every advantage the Salarians gained, they sadly sacrificed time. While humans can expect to live for around 80 years or more, Asari who can live up to 1,000 years, yet a Salarian? Sadly, they only live up to 40 years. Their entire lives unfold in what other species would consider only the first half of adulthood. To humanity, 40 years feels tragically short, but to a Salarian, it's enough time to reshape the course of galactic history. That limited lifespan influences nearly every aspect of the Salarian civilization. They don't have centuries to perfect an invention. They don't have lifetimes to debate political reform. Every decision matters. Every moment counts. Every opportunity must be seized before it's gone. Perhaps that's why Salarians develop such an obsession with progress. They are constantly researching, constantly experimenting, constantly improving. Settling for good enough simply isn't in their nature. Many of the galaxy's most advanced technologies trace their origins back to Salarian laboratories, not because they are the strongest species, but because they refuse to stop asking questions. Yet physically, Salarians are unlike any other council race. Warm-blooded amphibians with a smooth skin that ranges from pale blues and grays to vibrant greens and reds. Their blood carries a distinctive green hue, and rather than blinking downward like most species do, Salarians blink upward using thin protective membranes that shield their sensitive eyes from dryness and debris. Even the simple act of rolling their eyes carries a different meaning. For a human, it's used to show they are annoyed, but for a Salarian, it's usually nothing more than a response to protect their vision. is a tiny difference that most wouldn't know if they weren't told. Yet, even with those differences, Salarians stand beside humanity on the Citadel. I mean, they are, in every meaningful way, alien. From old movies, drawings, news reports, their head is usually what most humans would describe as a typical alien. The head shape, the big eyes, slender body. But don't think any less of them, because a Salarian could uplift a species just as fast as they could wipe them out. There is an old saying, curiosity killed the cat. If you ever said that to a Salarian, they'd probably ask how and why. Because curiosity isn't simply a personality trait among Salarians, it's the very foundation of their civilization. Long before the Citadel Council, long before the Turian hierarchy, and thousands of years before humanity ever left Earth, the Salarians were already asking questions about the world, science, and life itself. Every answer only led to another question, and every discovery pushed them further than the one before. Their civilization grew rapidly, not because they conquered, not because they possessed vast armies, but because they never stopped learning. Technology advanced, cities expanded, new theories became new inventions became everyday life. Eventually, Sur'Kesh was no longer enough, which led them to the stars. And like every mystery before them, the Salarians intended to solve it. The first Salarian ships left their homeworld not as vessels of conquest, but vessels of discovery. Unlike many civilizations throughout history, they weren't searching for enemies, they were searching for answers. The earliest Salarian colonies were established on worlds known as Agor, Manovi, and Jaito. Agor being the oldest Salarian city not on their homeworld. Even thousands of years later, these colonies remain at the very heart of Salarian space. They weren't built as military outposts, nor were they monuments to power. They were built for science. Each new colony became another place to study the galaxy, another opportunity to gather information. To the Salarians, knowledge wasn't just power, knowledge was survival. As their influence expanded, so did their understanding of the galaxy. But then, their explorers found something that changed everything. Hidden at the crossroads of an ancient network of mass relays was a structure unlike anything they had ever imagined. An enormous space station, silent, ancient, and waiting to be explored. The Citadel. Today, it's impossible to imagine the galaxy without it. The political heart of the galactic community, home to countless species, the seat of the Citadel Council. But when the Salarians arrived, it was a giant mystery. Who built it? How old was it? Why was it abandoned? Questions that the Salarians desperately wanted answers to. But there was one thing that surprised them. They weren't the first to ask those questions. Only a few decades earlier, another civilization had made the same discovery. The Asari. Yet, rather than compete for control of the Citadel, the two species did something remarkably rare in galactic history, or even in human history itself. They cooperated. The Salarians immediately opened diplomatic relations with the Asari, and despite their vastly different cultures, the partnership proved surprisingly natural. The Asari brought patience, diplomacy, a long-term vision. The Salarians brought innovation, scientific expertise, and a huge drive to uncover the unknown. Together, they began exploring the Citadel, studying the mass relay network, and slowly piecing together the remnants of a civilization that had vanished long before either species had reached the stars. The discovery marked the beginning of a new era, not just for Salarians, but for the entire galaxy. In time, the two civilizations proposed something not seen in the galaxy yet, a joint government. Not built around conquest, nor domination, but cooperation. In the year 500 BCE, the Citadel Council was founded, the beginning of what would become the Galactic Standard Calendar. the first true galactic government, and at its center stood two civilizations, the patient diplomats of Thessia and the endless curious minds of Sur'Kesh. However, one aspect of Salarian civilization that we have yet to discuss. Long before the Council existed, the Salarian Union had already cultivated one of the most sophisticated intelligence networks in the galaxy. Information. To most species, it's a resource. Something to be traded, protected, or even stolen. To the Salarians, it was something else entirely. It was a weapon. Long before the Citadel Council ever existed, before the first embassies, galactic law, or the council races had even agreed to work together, the Salarian Union had already begun mastering the art of intelligence and espionage. Because while other civilizations built larger armies, the Salarians asked a different question. Why fight a battle if you already know how it ends? It was this philosophy that led to the creation of one of the galaxy's earliest intelligence organizations, the League of One. Officially, it did not exist. There were no public headquarters, no uniforms, no speeches. Their only mark was a small medallion. The League operated entirely in the shadows. Its agents gathered intelligence, monitored political rivals, studied foreign civilizations, and quietly ensured that the Salarian Union was never caught by surprise. For the Salarians, this wasn't viewed as deception, it was simply common sense. Knowledge was power, and the more knowledge you possessed, the fewer mistakes you made. When the Salarians encountered the Asari, and the two civilizations agreed to cooperate, trust became the foundation of their new relationship. To demonstrate that trust, the Salarians did something almost unimaginable. They declassified the League's existence to prove they weren't hiding anything. But not even most of the Salarian government knew who the League was, or even their existence. It was intended as a gesture of transparency, proof that two civilizations had nothing to hide from one another. Instead, it became a disaster. The information contained within these archives was far more sensitive than anyone had anticipated. Operatives, contacts, networks, secrets collected over generations. People whose identities had remained hidden for years suddenly found themselves exposed. For an intelligence organization, exposure is a death sentence. The League of One acted swiftly and ruthlessly. Only 12 members could be part of the League of One at a time, and for a good reason. Because rather than allow those responsible to exploit the compromised information, the League operatives assassinated the entire inner cabinet of the Salarian Union. Those who approved on opening up the League's existence to the Asari were taken out without mercy, leaving no proof or evidence on who killed them. But you didn't need evidence to know who or why they were killed. The act was so shocking that even the Salarian government turned against them. Realizing the danger posed by a rogue league, the Special Task Group launched multiple operations to hunt them down. None returned. The STG then dispatched 10 of its brightest operatives, with the authority rivaling the Spectres. Only 2 came back, and they found no trace of the League. Just like that, the League of One disappeared, whether killed, captured, or simply erased from history. The organization ceased to exist, leaving behind only scattered relics and whispered stories. Though some of the League of One medallions have been found across the galaxy, either an escape pod, an abandoned fighter, on a collapsing space station, hidden within probes, buried, or found on a mummified Salarian corpse. Yet with some declassified information being released, rumors say that there was a 13th member, and that they possibly escaped their fellow members' fates. Some even theorize that the first Shadow Broker was the 13th member. I mean, an expert on collecting information, assassination, and staying in the shadows. I would say the shoe fits pretty well. But that is only speculation. Such an event would have marked the end of covert intelligence on an interstellar scale for most civilizations. Yet for Salarians, it became a lesson. Information was dangerous, not because it existed, but because it could fall into the wrong hands. The League of One was gone, but its philosophy survived. Centuries later, the philosophy would evolve into something even more sophisticated, evolving the STG, an organization capable of infiltrating governments, toppling regimes, preventing wars before they ever begun, and when necessary, changing the course of galactic history without anyone realizing they had been there. They didn't need monuments, they didn't need parades, because if they had done their job correctly, no one would ever know they had been involved at all. Intelligence can solve almost any problem. At least that's what the Salarians believed. For centuries, it had been true. Then, the galaxy encountered something no amount of intelligence could immediately overcome. The Rachni. The Council would accidentally discover the Rachni around 1 CE. I won't go too in-depth about the Rachni Wars, as that deserves its own video, but I must talk about it as the Salarians had to make decisions that would affect the galaxy. Today, the Rachni Wars are remembered as one of the darkest conflicts in galactic history. A war that nearly consumed Citadel space and the galaxy itself. But history often simplifies what made the Rachni so terrifying. It wasn't simply their numbers, it wasn't their size, it was their hive mind, and their ability to adapt. No negotiations could happen as the Rachni queens were buried beneath their worlds. So despite the combined efforts of the Asari and the Salarians, the war dragged on. World after world was threatened. Military planners searched desperately for answers. Scientists proposed new technologies. Yet, whatever they thought of or brought to the table, it wasn't enough. The Salarians faced a problem they couldn't outthink. They needed something else. Not another invention, not another fleet. They needed warriors. Not soldiers, but warriors. Warriors with bloodlust. Warriors who could fight the Rachni on their toxic worlds. The search led them to a world unlike any they had ever seen. Tachanka. In 80 CE, they found Tachanka, a planet that seemed determined to destroy anything that dared live upon it. Its environment was brutal. Its wildlife was relentless. Its history was soaked in violence. Yet life endured. Because of those conditions, evolution on Tachanka had forged something extraordinary. The Krogan. Towering, powerful, resilient beyond reason. A Krogan could survive wounds that would kill almost any other species. With their incredible regenerative abilities, their relentless determination, everything about them had been shaped by one of the harshest worlds in the galaxy. Even after destroying themselves in a nuclear war, the Krogan had survived. Their world laid in ruins, but the Krogan refused to die. When the Salarians found the Krogan, they looked like the answer they need for the Rachni Wars. So, the Salarians uplifted the Krogan. Advanced technology, modern medicine, knowledge that had taken other civilizations centuries to acquire, was handed to the Krogan in only a fraction of the time. Luckily, the gamble worked. The Krogan accepted and embraced their new role. They joined the fight against the Rachni. They didn't hesitate. They fought. World after world was reclaimed from the Rachni. Battles that had once seemed unwinnable suddenly turned into the Council's favor. Where entire fleets had failed, the Krogan succeeded. Being able to reproduce warriors like no other species can, they pushed and pushed until the Rachni was no more. By 300 CE, the Rachni were declared extinct. The Rachni were defeated. The war was over. The galaxy celebrated. And just like that, the Krogan had become heroes. Without them, many historians believe the Council races may not have survived. The Krogan were given a gift, a new pristine world for the Krogan to grow on and build on. And because of the Rachni Wars, the councils established a new law which prohibited the activation of uncharted mass relays, which would later be the cause for the human and Turian First Contact War. If you wish to hear about that, the video will be in the description down below. Now back to the Salarians. It seemed the Salarians had made the perfect decision. They had solved the impossible. But every action has a consequence. The same qualities that made the Krogan perfect warriors made them the worst enemy. Their birth rate was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Entire generations appeared in the time it took another species to raise a single family. The council rewarded them with new worlds. The Krogan settled on them. Then those worlds became overpopulated, so they wanted more and more. Disputes turned into fights. Fights turned into invasions. Before long, the species that had once saved galactic civilization began threatening it. Eventually, the Krogan pushed further and further, started getting closer and closer to council colonies. And when the Krogan started landing on Lucia, which is an Asari colony, the Krogan were asked to leave the Asari colony, which made the Krogan upset, believing they deserved more space and more land and more planets. The Krogan became outraged. They refused. And because of that, they left the council with no choice. Another war. And this time against the Krogan. The Krogan rebellions had begun. The galaxy stood on the edge of another catastrophic war. And once again, everyone looked to the Salarians. The same species that brought the Krogans as the solution for the last war was now expected to solve the consequences of that. This time, there was no easy answers. Every option carried a terrible cost. Destroy the Krogan and betray the heroes who saved the galaxy? Do nothing and risk the council to fall to the Krogans? No, the Salarians searched for another answer. Not through brute force, not through diplomacy. They do what they know best. Science. They proposed a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not a bomb, not a fleet, not an army. A single genetic modification, one that would alter the future of the entire species. They called it the Genophage. The Genophage was unlike any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. Created by the Salarian scientists during the height of the Krogan rebellions, the Genophage was a genetically engineered bioweapon designed to reduce the Krogan birth rate to a sustainable level. Contrary to what many believe, the Genophage did not make the Krogan sterile. They could still have children, but nearly every pregnancy ended before birth. Only a tiny fraction of Krogan infants would survive. To the Salarians, this wasn't intended to be an act of extermination. It was to control the Krogan population. A way to stop an endless war without erasing an entire species from existence. They didn't want to wipe out the Krogan, they wanted the war to stop. How could you fight an army that would replace itself by the time you buried your own? That's where the Genophage came in. As the war was hitting the Salarians and the Asari hard, the Council made first contact with the Turians, who then agreed to help the Council as they too saw the Krogan as a threat. The Turians declared war on the Krogan and joined side by side with the Salarians and the Asari. But designing the Genophage was one thing. Deploying it was another. The Salarians had created the solution. The Turians would be the ones to deliver it. As the Krogan rebellions intensified, the Salarians handed the Genophage to the Turians. And once the Turians received the Genophage, they almost immediately deployed it in 710 CE. Unleashing the Genophage across Krogan space, the effects were almost immediate. The overwhelming tide of the Krogan reinforcements slowed down. Entire armies that could once replace their loss almost overnight could no longer do so. For the first time since the rebellions began, the Council had a chance. And once the Krogan could no longer keep up their numbers like they used to, that's when the rebellion came to an end. Once again, the galaxy had been saved. Or at least, that's how many within Citadel space chose to remember it. Because victory came at a cost. It reshaped the Krogan. Hope became scarce. Entire clans fell into despair. Many abandoned thoughts of rebuilding their culture or Tachanka altogether. Others embraced violence even more fiercely, believing there was little left to lose. To the Krogan, the Genophage wasn't simply a biological weapon. It was a sentence that the Krogan and future Krogan must serve. Even among the Council races, opinions were divided. Some argued the Genophage had prevented another galactic extinction. Without it, they believed the Krogan would have overwhelmed Citadel space through sheer numbers. Others saw something far darker, a punishment inflicted upon an entire species for the action of its government and warlords. For Salarians, however, the Genophage wasn't born from hatred. It was born from calculation. Probabilities, statistics, big pictures, little pictures. The belief that sacrificing one future could preserve countless others. Whether that decision was justified remains one of the greatest moral debates in history of the Mass Effect galaxy. By now, the Salarians have earned a certain reputation throughout the galaxy. Scientists, inventors, spies, master strategists. For many species, they are respected. For others, they're hated. Some even see them as manipulators, always working behind the scenes, always knowing more than they're willing to share. But to understand the Salarians more, we must have to look past all that and look into their culture. Salarians rarely build their lives around romance. Their society places little importance on love, marriage, reproduction, and family are matters of politics, not passion. A single female may lay dozens of eggs each year, yet only a small number are permitted to be fertilized. As a result, nearly 90% of all Salarians are male. The few females who are born become some of the most influential figures in Salarian society. They are known as Dalatrases. They lead powerful clans, negotiate political alliances, and quickly guide the future of the Salarian Union from behind the scenes. To outsiders, it seems strange, even cold. But to a Salarian, it's simply another system designed for stability. From the moment they are hatched, young Salarians undergo a unique form of psychological imprinting. The Dalatras overseeing their birth becomes one of the first figures they recognize, a bond that often lasts for the rest of their lives. Even a Salarian's name reflects the importance of family. A complete name contains reference to their homeworld, their nation, their city, their district, their clan, and finally, their given name.
What's your name, Salarian?
My full name is Gorat Tu Heranon Maldinest God Inost Ledra. Gorat Tu is my homeworld, Heranon my clan's country, Maldinest and Got are the city and district where I live.
Even their traditions reveal what they value. On the first day of each year, Salarians celebrate Beto, a time to repay debts, honor obligations, and strengthen relationships that may one day prove important. Because in Salarian culture, nothing is ever truly insignificant. Every favor, every conversation, every piece of information may become valuable someday. Even religion reflects this mindset. While many modern Salarians are not deeply religious, some still believe in a great cycle of life and rebirth. A reminder that although an individual life may be brief, the legacy they leave behind can endure for generations. Perhaps that's why Salarians work with such urgency, knowing their lives are measured not in centuries, but in decades. 40 years. Yet within those 40 years, a Salarian discovered the Citadel, helped form the Council, built intelligence organizations that shaped galactic history, ended one war, started another, created the Genophage, and developed technologies that would transform their civilizations and others around the galaxy itself. Whether history remembers them as heroes, villains, or something far more complicated, one thing is impossible to deny. Few species have changed the course of the galaxy as often, or as profoundly as the Salarians. They never possessed the large fleets. They never claimed the greatest armies. Instead, they changed history the same way they solved every other problem, by thinking one step ahead. And perhaps that has always been the Salarians' greatest weapon. Not the strength of their armies, but the speed of their minds. I just want to say thank you all for listening to me talk about the Salarians and their culture. If I missed anything, or if there are any other topics you wish for me to talk about, please mention it in the comments below. Once again, thank you. My name is Lucian, and have yourselves a good night.